Thank you for joining us today. Anybody else feel like yesterday was like the longest day ever? But it was like so good, but the longest day ever. But it's so good. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to Tableau for giving us this opportunity. My name is Amber, and I am a data analyst at Life Church. I fill our data evangelist role. My family and I have attended Life Church for 12 years, so we're plugged in and a part of it for a while now. I've been on staff for about 7 years now, and in 5 of those, I was fortunate to get to work with the YouVersion team, which they are the creators of the Bible app, which chances are some of you in this room probably have that installed on your device. During that time, I was fortunate enough to be able to work with a scrappy bunch of developers who were constantly pushing the boundaries of what could be, which was awesome. During my season with the team, I got to experience launching an app and having it see grow to over 100 million installs. And with that rapid growth comes a lot of excitement as well as a lot of challenges, which led to me actually getting a Scrum Master certification during that time. So what we want to share with you guys today is this next slide here. Who we are and how we adopted Tableau, how it's used in LifeChurch.tv today, lessons learned from deploying to the organization, our next steps, and closing. If you would like to see the presentation online, you can go to goto.lc/Tableau and see it there. And we have some little cards with that link that you guys can pick up as you leave as well. I'm going to hand it off to Kevin. He's going to share a little bit about who he is and what he does in our organization.
As Amber said, my name's Kevin Penry, and I'm the operations leader at Life Church. What our leadership looks like, our governance looks like, is we have a directional leadership team of 5. And the 5 of us have been together for 15 years, which in any organization or church or whatever it may be, it's a real rare thing for a leadership team to be that cohesive and stick together that long. And that has contributed greatly, I believe, to our success of deploying Tableau. I'm going to touch a little bit on that. I hope what's in it for you this morning, wherever you're coming from, whether you're in the room because you have specific questions about deploying in a church environment, or if you were here because your favorite session was full, I hope that you'll walk away with something. I feel like there's an opportunity here to understand a little more clearly about what ingredients it takes to really be successful at deploying Tableau in an organization. As a church, we are entirely always focused on trying to reach the people in the seats in the audience, and so it kind of predisposes our culture to really try to understand what's it going to take to connect with those that we're working with. As I mentioned, we've been together for 15 years. Before that, my background, my degree's in architecture. I was educated as an architect, and I spent a decade as a commercial pilot. Those two things really kind of predisposed me to really appreciate data visualization. And the team recognized early on that I had a real problem with charts and graphs, and I was no longer allowed to be in the room by myself with just charts and graphs. There was accountability. But we now are seeing that data visualization is key to the enormous amounts of data and information that we have opportunity to evaluate now as it goes on. So hopefully you will all leave with something this morning. This is my favorite piece of data visualization, and it's not fancy, it's very simple, it's very basic, but I hope all of us feel touched by this somewhere. Simple graph. The y-axis is world population, the x-axis is time. We're a church with a mission, and so the timeline is New Testament timeline, goes back to 0 through now. And that yellow bar is a bit of something that helps me designate where I'm at in that timeline. That yellow bar is 1950 through 2050. And I don't know how much of that time I'm going to get to occupy. I'm a little over halfway in it right now. But I don't know how much of that will be viable. Your yellow bar is in there somewhere. It's going to be probably a little further to the right of mine. And only God knows how much or how wide that bar is going to be. But the important thing to see is it's a significant amount of time. It does show up unless we begin to believe that the time and the opportunity that we have to actually impact the globe or whatever we do, whatever it is that we're doing in life, it is significant. This is the aha moment. The next slide is the aha moment for me as to what's uniquely happening during our window in time. That's world population. Now, for us as a church, that says something about our mission, and it impacts how we might think or discern where we're at and what we're doing. whatever you're doing, whatever your role is, whatever widget it is you're producing, you're in the same boat as far as we are a unique group of people. We're a unique generation where we have an opportunity before us to deal with a larger globe than anybody prior to this time has, whatever the case may be. And that's significant. We can't go about, we as a church decided early on that we could understand why we might structure ourselves differently and do things differently here than might have been done here. While our message is the same, our method is going to evolve and change with the opportunities that are there. This could be a very frustrating time for any of us, whether we're selling widgets or a part of a church with a mission. It could be frustrating for us if the resources were not commensurate with the opportunity. But as we all know, the resources have increased with the opportunity. We have the ability to go places that it used to take much longer to go. Communicate through technology. Things just happen so much quicker and better. I believe we're living in one of the most exciting times that have ever existed in history, and I'm very, very glad to be here. That's my aha moment that translates to the organization. Next slide. That bit of scale that comes from that aha moment drove us in our approach to the way we began to distribute the Bible. We have the Bible app has over right now about 151 million installs. There's 970 versions available, 667 languages available on that app. But that's just an example of how the realization of the first visual impacted our thinking about how we would go about accomplishing our mission. That's true whatever it is, whatever seat you sit in today, whatever your mission is, whatever your goal is, whatever it is that you're setting out to do, we are dealing with a scale unlike and different any prior generation has ever dealt with. And there's an opportunity to figure out how to utilize it properly. This tells you a little bit about us. We're a multi-site church. We're in 20 locations, 20 physical locations in 6 states at this point. 2014, our average attendance is right around 60,000. Those are physical people in seats over those 20 locations. We have on our web feed, on our web streaming, we'll have another 150,000 every weekend that will approach that. We'll be engaged in that. So this is just, again, a bit of the thinking of scale that comes from a simple visual that impacted us many years ago as to what's truly unique about this time and this season. This talks a little bit about our culture, and I feel like the culture is critical. We've experienced a successful implementation of Tableau, probably pretty rapid. Amber will talk to you more about that as we go on. But I feel like it's critical to understand the pre-existing conditions that were a part of that culture. And you, whether if you're a reseller of Tableau, or if you're a user that hopes to implement Tableau, if you're sharing, whatever the case may be, it's critical, I believe, to understand the parts of the puzzle that are present for the best outcome. This is our efforts to try to be self-aware as an organization. And we highly value self-awareness, both as individuals and organizationally. We believe self-awareness is the platform on which all development occurs, and that if we are not accurately self-aware, organizationally or individually, we will be attempting to do the wrong things and not getting the right outcomes. Once we become more self-aware, we understand how we are equipped to accomplish specific outcomes. That specific one, self-awareness, lends itself to a feedback environment. And so from the very beginning, our environment has consisted of lots of feedback, whether it's attendance and what we might have done to change that attendance, whether it's an impact on a community, whether it's the number of people that are engaged in a community. We spend our days surrounded with charts, graphs, and feedback, asking ourselves, what's different? What caused this increase? What did we do differently? Trying to connect cause with effect. That type of environment has lent itself to a ready adaptation of Tableau. That also leads to a lot of mutual trust and respect for one another because we understand one another's differences. We embrace those differences. I don't know about you guys, but I spent the first half of my life believing that if everybody could be just like me, the world would be a lot better place. And at some point, I woke up to the fact, thank God that everybody's not like me, and how terrible of a place would that be. So We appreciate the differences. We have tools that really exploit that and help us to understand our Myers-Briggs. We do a lot of 360-degree feedback, and we really nurture and develop this high feedback, and therefore Tableau has really found itself in our culture and in our organization. Without self-awareness, I always say this: we're at risk of being a bad American Idol audition. And you guys know how and it's been a few seasons. I'm not even sure what American Idol's doing now, but for the first portion of the seasons, it was always filled with all the bad reels of folks that lack self-awareness. And we, organizationally, whatever it is that we're doing, or individually, if we lack that self-awareness, if we cut ourselves off from feedback, from truth, from the things that surround us, from the outcomes that we are associated with, we're at risk of looking just that foolish in whatever it is we're attempting to do. Whatever we're trying to market, whatever we're trying to accomplish, whatever we're trying to overcome. So therefore, our environment around this self-awareness is built around lots of feedback. We evaluate, we adjust, and we take a next step. Now, an important part of that process, because in that evaluation, and I put it like this: I believe the constant companion of self-awareness is a sense of inadequacy. And that's what oftentimes drives people away from the willingness to be self-aware. And in order to embrace our inadequacy, for us, we realize that the church isn't ours, it's about something bigger. And even at the individual level, we understand that we learn to see what we are good at and try to build on that. We certainly don't want to think we're good at something that we're not. We realize that results in a bad situation. We'd like to learn what it is we are good at and figure out how to do more of that. Okay? I'm going to turn it back over to Amber. She's going to talk a little bit about what the adoption process of Tableau in that environment looks like.
Yeah. We often get asked questions, okay, so what did the adoption process look like? And so I'll give you a little bit of history. We've always been a data-aware organization from very early on, thanks to Kevin's influence from pretty early on. At the beginning, it looked like some numbers put in a notepad, which then turned into Excel spreadsheets, which then we used Excelsius, which I think is just called Dashboard now, from 2006 to 2014. And it was data that was manually entered into an Excel spreadsheet that we then shared a Swift file via an internal portal website. Again, it was manual, but it worked well for us. It served us really, really well for that time frame. And we actually ran that dashboard as I recreated it in Tableau. We actually ran them consistently at the same time for over a year as we transitioned people over. So I always encourage people, don't just think you've got to switch over and cut it. Transition people over, and it took us about a year. So you may think, okay, when did you actually get your hands on Tableau? We actually bought 10 desktop licenses in 2012, the fall of 2012. And it didn't really go anywhere for about 6 months later. I got into this role, and it's not because our people weren't capable or our people weren't smart, because we're very capable and very smart. But we found for us the key was just having a dedicated person who went to bed and woke up thinking about Tableau. So we encourage people that say, how do you use it? It works best when you have a dedicated person. This is all I do. I live in Tableau all day, so that's all I do. Highly recommend. That's when we started to see a lot of momentum, when I was in that role, and that's what I was doing. So we bought the 10 desktop licenses. I started in this role last April and began just experimenting. My first step, because I felt overwhelmed, was to just take an existing dashboard, like the attendance and giving one, recreate it in Tableau, just using Excel spreadsheets. I'm not a database engineer, so I don't know how to create a database, so I started there. And then I just started recreating things and producing things on the fly for various teams. I will say, though, my first project, I was super excited about it, feeling really good and pumped up and feeling confident. And then the team leader let me know that I was relaying inaccurate data. And that was a big failure, but I bounced back from that because thankfully we have a great culture that embraces failure. Bounce back from that, learn from that, and realize that I always have to partner with the data expert. It doesn't matter if I'm in HR or if I'm working on a project with the IT team or if I'm working on a project in the finance group. I've always got to be partnering with the data expert. I can't just assume that as the data's coming out that that's the way I need to present it. So anyway, so over time, I just started to create projects, and what I love about Tableau is that you don't have to go all in and make this huge six-figure investment right off the top. We really said, okay, is this tool going to work for us? Is Amber capable of figuring it out? Are we going to get this facilitated in our organization? And so we were able to just roll it out as we were able to prove that we were going to get return on investment for our organization. So I started, I would produce something, well then we needed a way to share it. So we got Tableau Server in 2013 and bought licenses in increments of 25. So then I started with leadership, so I would create projects for them, share it with them. They had access to the Tableau Server. And just as more pockets of the organization, hey, I heard about this, well, can you do something for us for this? We would just continually buy the licenses as we needed until we were at the point that we actually have the core license, which is what we have now. So this is a little look into our usage. We have about 400 people on staff, and we have about 212 of them are actually logging in and looking. We have 104 workbooks, 19 projects, and this is the last 6 months of view into our server, 22,000 views and 3,300 sessions. 104 workbooks is probably really not a great thing. That's a lot. So this is an area we're going to be bringing focus into. But when you can make things on the fly so quickly with Tableau, it's a problem, but it's a good problem to have of constantly managing that content. This is our user viewer patterns. So you can see our biggest day that our users are looking is on Monday, because that's typically when all of our weekly meetings are, when we're analyzing how did the weekend go, what worked well, what didn't. And so you see a lot of activity on that day. But you can see our users are pretty much accessing Tableau Server 7 days a week. And then over to the right, the X or the Y-axis is actually the hours of the day. And so you can see the size of the circle is how many views during that hour. And so you can see our users are looking at them pretty much all day long. And we have a few night owls and some early birds. And yeah, so it makes us, we have to get super strategic about when we take it down to do things. But we have great adoption so far. This is a look at our Global Operations Center, and this is a room that anytime you walk by has glass all in the front. You're always pretty much going to see a Tableau visualization that's going on in there, and it's just a great room to visualize analytics in. So you may be asking, what do you measure? And what the team sees being measured is what the team will view as important, and so for us, community engagement is important. And so how do we measure that? Well, through lots of learning, we've broken it down into 4 areas. We have life groups, Kazone experience, life missions, and restore. And life groups are groups of people that we encourage to meet and create community. They meet off-site or in local businesses, local homes during the week. We currently have over 2,700 life groups, which equates to approximately 30,000 people of our congregation being in small groups. Kazone experience, we have 2,061 participants so far this year, and what that is an experience where people are able to come in and look at their, it's an interactive event, it's 2 days, and they come in and they examine their core values, they look at their spiritual gifts, they think about their past experiences, and with those 3 components, they identify their common themes, bring clarity to their passions, and lead them to a purpose that God has just for them. So really this one, we've had over 17,000 people participate in that since it actually launched, but that's a great one for people discovering their purpose. And we have crazy stories of doctors becoming public school teachers or fully seasoned executives that are very successful, just stopping everything and starting over because they've discovered their purpose. And then life missions and restore, those are they're our efforts to share Christ in our local communities. And so we believe our stance on this is that communities are not changed by programs, but they're changed by relationships. And so in our missions work, we build and support the relationships that inspire the change. So we track the number of participants and the number of connections that are made there. So what we do, that page that we were just looking at is kind of an overview of those 4 areas. And then this is the next few pages, we actually break down those areas. So at a glance, you'll see some filter selectors over there. We have cluster and campus, and we refer to each one of our locations as a campus, and then we group those campuses into clusters. So you can look at a cluster and see, just filter by a cluster and see just those locations that are a part of that cluster. Those 3-letter abbreviations are the abbreviations that we give to campuses. So STO is South Tulsa, Oklahoma. EDM is Edmond, so we just abbreviate all of those. So what we look at is we always look at this year to last year, and we compare that to our goal. How are we doing? How are we doing in relation currently to where we were last year? If we're seeing a dip this year, did we see the same dip last year? So is this normal behavior? We also like to look at our goal and see, okay, what percentage to goal are we? And then we have life groups engagement. And one of the things about being a church is that although it sounds creepy, as a data analyst, I would love it if everyone's retina was scanned as they walked in the building. But we would never do that. But just from a data analyst perspective, I'm like, dang, there's so much gold there. But so people can attend our church for 10, 15 years, and we know nothing about them. We don't know their name. If they don't ever give or participate in anything, they don't exist in our database, so we don't know. So we'll never know the exact unique number of people who attend Life Church. So the way that we have figured out, okay, well, how do we determine how involved are people, is we take our life group leaders and we survey them once a year, and we basically say how many people on average are a part of your group. And so we take that and then extrapolate that number and look at it and say, okay, what's the percentage of that of a weekly attendance at this particular campus? And so you can see that at South Tulsa, 81% is our best guesstimate of level of engagement there. Any questions there with that?
I could elaborate just a little bit on that. We you can tell we're really a data-driven church, which is one thing, but we have a core value of not being invasive into the attenders. We really believe that it's a little bit like when you walk onto a car lot. If you see a bunch of salesmen there ready to descend on you, it's just like, leave me alone, just go away. But then as you're shopping for a car, you find the one that you want, your attitude changes on a dime, and it's like, where is somebody? I need somebody to help me. I need somebody to answer my questions. So we kind of walk a fine line between not being invasive and asking for a lot of questions, and yet really enjoying the data and processing the data. One area, and if you're going to be working with churches or approaching churches, or if you're here wondering about that, kids ministry by necessity has to have that information. So we need to know who parents are, and when they check their children in, we got to know special needs of those kids. We also background check all the folks out of requirements. So we background checks all the folks that are serving in those areas that are impacting kids. That serves as a good basis of information for us that we can extrapolate off of oftentimes.
Mm-hmm. So we do that for all the different areas. Same view there. One thing that's been really helpful for us that I recommend is that include a video from the leader of the team that this dashboard is for, and that speaks directly to the users and relays vision. Your users are going to be more likely to use it. If this was me speaking on this video, it probably wouldn't be as effective, plus it's not my niche. So I always recommend have a video embedded into your dashboard. And then as you're introducing these dashboards to your users, send them to these links first so that they get some insight, okay, what's the purpose of this dashboard? Because there's a lot of people, too, that are really intimidated by dashboards. I've seen, even within our team, people that think they're scared by it. They're afraid of just the whole fact of it. So send this to them, relay vision, and I'll just play just a little bit of this so you can kind of see how we use it, if it'll play. Hopefully it will.
Hey everybody, you're watching this video because you are at our life groups and missions dashboards. So I want to take a minute and answer the question, why do our dashboards exist and what benefit do they offer you? Well, think of dashboards like a fitness app on your phone. I've got a phone and I've got my fitness app loaded in, and you may use a fitness app and you put all your information in there and you can look at a lot of things about your fitness. All of us have different things that are important to us. Maybe you have goals that you're working on, or you can look at your app and learn about your workout routines, or food that you're eating, and so whatever it is that matters to you, you can get information and see how things are going using your app. And your dashboards, your life groups and missions dashboards, are very much the same thing. Every year we enter our 4 key goals: number of life groups, restore, Kazone, and partner connections into develop.me, so you can come to our dashboards and see how things are going. It's just a way to take a step back and see your progress reflected over the course of the year. Imagine driving a car without a speedometer and not knowing how fast you're going. Your dashboards are like a speedometer in that they just let you.
So that's a little preview there. We also recommend a how-to video, how to interact with the dashboard. We often say it's like, when you get into a rental car when you're traveling at the airport, and it's like, okay, and you're sitting there, and we got a Prius when we got here, and we were like, okay, like, what in the world do we, like, I was like, this is a perfect example. This is what your users are going to feel like the first time they look at your dashboard. I mean, I'm in it, I built it, I created it, so to me, it seems natural. Oh, you click here. But for your users, they're not going to feel that same way. They're not going to have that same perspective. So we create a video of how to use the dashboard, and I'll just give you a few seconds of this so you can see.
Hey team, just wanted to provide a brief demo of our new dashboard to help you guys dive in. Whenever you click the link, you'll be taken to the Tableau server and asked to sign in. You can use your regular lifechurch.tv account information. Once you sign in, you'll be taken to the Overview tab. Now across the top, you'll see several tabs that you can click as you go through and dive deeper into the information in this tool. The Overview tab shows where we are year to date in regards to our Big 4 areas. The next tab, entitled Big 4, provides additional information around life groups, Kazone participants, local partner connections, and restore. Over here on the right, you'll find a legend that shows the blue is 2013, the red is 2014, and then your goals are depicted using this horizontal black line. Then you'll see 2 filter options. You can filter by cluster or campus. So let's say I wanted to look just at the Tulsa campuses. I can select Tulsa, and just the Tulsa campuses appear. I'll go back and click all. And then for a campus, you can select all, as we show here, or you can select 1 campus, or 2 campuses, or 3 campuses, or however many you'd like. This will allow you to identify trends and just see how different campuses are doing as well as your own to help learn and grow from the information.
A little demo there. Okay, so you may be thinking, how do you get users to actually use what you create, or how do you make it? How do you drive the curiosity? How do you get them to want to use it? And for us, this is an example of a project here that we did. We had the problem that we were trying to solve was how many people have applied or went through the background check process to serve but never got plugged in, because we need to increase the number of volunteers at a particular location. And the estimation we looked around the room was like, probably not very many. I mean, most people get plugged in. We have pretty good processes, right? So within just a couple hours, I was able to create this, and it was astounding because we realized we had 3,300 people who had went through the process but had never got plugged in for whatever reason. And the hard cost of this was $85,000. And so we really sat back and thought, okay, this data is telling us that we have a lot of opportunity. And then it just drove the curiosity. Well, why does it look like this? And why is this? What's up with BAO down here? What's going on here? And so it was a great project and a great example of how it drove that curiosity. And the way that I created this is that the user can select their campus on the bar. When they select that, it will generate a list of all the people to the right. And it looks like chicken scratch right now, but we just made it where you can't see the names. If you click on that name, it will actually open up their their profile in our CRM tool, so then they can then contact. Or they can export the list by clicking on the little Excel icon. And I purposely did not put email, phone number, and that type of thing in this list because we did not want them to just mass emailing people. And that's part 2 of just educating and getting your users to understand how to adequately or properly use this data without freaking people out. You know, we ran this report, and these people. Is a great opportunity right here. You need to reach out to these people, a human contact, call them, see what's going on, and let's see how we can get them plugged in. And this, we initially, anytime we roll out something new, we'll just test it with a few campuses. And this one spread like wildfire. I mean, it was like we weren't ready to roll it out to other campuses, and they were like, I hear about this, I want to know what this is, can we get our hands on this? And like our Jinx campus, they plugged in 45 people in like 3 days, and that's enough to staff like the host team an entire experience. And that was super easy. I mean, it was just an opportunity that was just waiting there, and data served us really well there. I'm now going to hand it off to Kevin. He's going to talk about what does the culture look like in order for this type of adoption process, and what place does data have at the table at a ministry that's very relational focused.
I love it when Amber talks about experiencing a win like that, because that's what propels the adoption process. Nobody's going to get intensely involved until they see that it has a real value for them. And for them to experience some kind of a win like that, it shoots it forward. And Amber's going to talk more as we go on about how to identify where those wins could be and how critical it might be within the organizational structure as to where those wins are placed. We talking about this culture. I think I began to describe it. These are some of the points of it. A collaborative environment. If you've got an environment of lone rangers and people that are very territorial and are not willing to share information, they don't want to see information that's not transparent, they're probably not going to be as excited about data visualization. So you got to figure out how you're going to accomplish that. With the results that we've had at Life Church, again, I will attribute it to a collaborative environment that's built around self-awareness that develops this mutual trust and respect. We really believe that together we can do more than we can individually or apart. There's a strong appreciation for team, high feedback, so we've been used to that feedback that's coming back. We talked about, Amber elaborated a little bit more, there's vulnerability in that feedback. It's got to be a safe place to fail. It's not a safe place at Life Church to fail over and over. If you keep making the same mistake, that's going to be fatal for you as far as a team member. But if you're reaching for the fence and you only get 80% of the way there, we love it. You know, you assess it, you figure out what your outcome is, figure out how to go better and move forward. So we embrace that opportunity maybe to reach for the fence and maybe not get all the way there. There is a quest for learning and improvement, and nothing will feed that better than good, solid data visualization. And the reality is this: it's not the data visuals, it's not the charts and the graphs that are going to make the turn in something. It's the conversations that they produce. And what you're looking for is the tool that spurs those conversations, that causes people to ask the questions. Even the situation that Amber referred to where she made the mistake of presenting a dashboard that didn't have accurate data. It resulted in a conversation, it got corrected, and there was an outcome. Everything, it's got to be a safe place to experience something like that. If you sit back, if you're in an environment, if you're trying to implement an environment where it's not okay to take a step forward and embrace the risk of maybe it not being perfect, then there's going to be a challenge to deal with. I'm not saying you can't move forward, obviously. We all understand that, but it's going to impact your ability to move forward. Quest for learning and improvement. And then, as I'm just mentioning, what if you don't have that kind of environment? It sounds great, but gee, Kevin, I don't get to operate in that environment. The people that I'm trying to implement with, it's not that environment. What do? I work with other groups and churches implementing, trying to lead them to data visualizations, and I encounter these issues. And here's what we say, and that is start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Begin to identify these pieces. Take this value of self-awareness. Don't turn a blind eye. Don't ignore the fact. Don't say, you know what, we don't have these issues. We don't have these problems. Identify the problems. Identify the blockages. Know where your roadblocks are at. and then look for opportunities. Only by knowing those roadblocks are you going to begin to discover the opportunities for your workarounds. Keep your eyes open. I always try to see things a little bit like a puzzle, a big jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes you have the lid to the box, and that's great. If you do, you've got the lid to the box, you kind of can identify what pieces begin to go where. If you begin to put the wrong pieces in the wrong places, you've screwed everything up. Because in the right places the right pieces are not going to fit. The picture's not going to look right. So you can't, we kind of have a metaphor that we talk about of sometimes it gets easier just to think, we'll pull a pocket knife out, start whittling on the piece to make it fit where we need it to go. And once we've done that, we've just screwed up the whole picture. Because the right piece is not where it's supposed to be, and where that piece actually belongs it's not going to be available. So we try to do that. When we're dealing with an organization, ours is no different, we try to identify senior leadership values. I've been a part of that senior leadership team, and these things resonate with me, so it flowed out. In other areas, and if you're part of an organization or you're trying to execute or implement in an organization, the senior leader is going to have values, and the organization is going to look like that senior leadership. Identify what those are. Identify the things that he or that team is most, or she or that team is most passionate about. Identify those things, and then begin to have your eyes open where you can celebrate the wins. Try to be able to produce some examples of data visualization that would evaluate and point out some wins in those areas of value, or maybe some things that would show up, things that might be holding that value back, and then bring it to it. If that senior leadership or the senior leadership team begins to get excited about the data visualization that you're producing, or a particular data visualization, that will begin to flow. It'll begin to cascade through the organization. Amber's going to talk to us more about that. Be aware of the folks that might stand in your way, whatever the reason may be. If they're insecure, if they don't feel like that they can be as transparent as they need to be in order for the information that you're wanting to display to go out, if they don't want the whole world to see that, if they don't want to see the organization to see that, if they don't want to see other department heads to see that, that's an issue. And you've got to figure out how you're going to work around that and how you're going to face that culture. And then just remember, it's all about the conversations that result from it. Amber, you can elaborate more.
Yeah.
Oh, and maybe I should stick with this for a minute. These are some of the things I've already kind of addressed some of them. There's the things that can hold you back, a disconnection with reality. And if you're in an organization that doesn't want to know the truth and they want to continue to believe whatever they want to believe and keep doing whatever they've been doing independent of the result, it's going to be a challenge. You can produce great visuals there that might show them that what they believe is not accurate, and then you're kind of got to figure out what happens from there. That lack of self-awareness, a fear of conflict, fear of the unknown, unwillingness to change, being scared of accountability, all of those things can begin to impact. And this leads to this. It goes beyond the things that I've talked about. A lot that you hear coming out of me is reflective of what I would love to see present in leadership of any organization that I was trying to move forward with data visualization, Tableau. Once leadership begins to buy in and understand and be a proponent, that's great. But then you're still going, and when you got somebody like Amber over here, that's a big part. You've got to have both of those things. But if you don't have your IT support on the same page with you, if they're not supportive, if they are feeling like, gee, you know what, I really feel like RBI should be more a part of IT rather than outside of it, that could be a struggle. If they're not fully supportive, if they're not responsive, nothing can ruin Amber's day. She said yesterday was a long day, and this is not because some folks threw any wrenches in the plans intentionally, but back at home, it was a long day for her yesterday because she was up till 2 a.m. Pacific time fixing some things that had been broken by some unforeseen updating and some challenges that were thrown into the mix. Now, that occurred with an IT team that is extremely supportive and strong proponents of Amber and her role and the organization's role. If you've got somebody that's not supportive and not interested in seeing the success of things, then it can be a nightmare. And then, of course, your data evangelist is going to know how to, or has got to be effective at executing with the users. Amber?
Okay. So you may be, I'll start with, how do you get your users to use what you create? And again, it goes back to start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can, whether you're in leadership or you're in the data evangelist role. And by doing this, you're acknowledging that it's not about you. So ways to drive the adoption momentum. Identify and take advantage of low-hanging fruit. What have you already created in a different tool that you can just recreate? There's nothing wrong with just recreating what you've already created. Don't think because it's a new tool that you've got to come out with something amazing and just wow the entire organization. That's not necessarily the case. So just look around. What have we already created that we can simply recreate? And by doing that, you acknowledge that you're meeting the user where they are. And as a data evangelist, that's your role. You have to meet them where they are. Here's an example of a Life Kids dashboard that we created. And this already existed in a different tool before we recreated it in Tableau. And Life Kids is our children's ministry. And so you can see last year to this year, the year-over-year growth. You can see our highest weekend ever, our lowest weekend. And then we had some weather at our lowest weekend there. You can see year-to-date attendance. How are we doing? We're up 17% over last year. And we always look at our kids' attendance to our total attendance ratio, and we like to keep that around 20%. Again, this already existed. It just looks prettier, and it's in Tableau now. Here's an example of meeting the user where they are. This is a terrible visualization, and I would never create this just on my own and hand this to somebody. I look at this and I think I don't even know what to look at. I just glaze over it and I don't even know what to do. But this is what they were used to looking at in Excel sheets, and they track their data. Each week had its own Excel file. So this right here view has over 4,000 Excel sheets, what would have been equivalent to 4,000 Excel sheets. I met the user where they are. I recreated this. I tried to talk them out of this, but this is what they wanted, and that's okay. But we did gain efficiencies by going to Tableau with automated data. So this was still a win, even though it's not what it should look like. But what could it look like? This is what I think it could have looked like. This is the exact same data, but immediately my eye is drawn to the red bars. This is telling me that I have low leader to children ratios, and that I need more people in those particular rooms and those particular experiences. But I mean, just think how much quicker your eye and your brain thinks when you see that. So we'll get them here, but I couldn't take them here from the very beginning, and that's okay. Yeah, we're almost out. So we have two types of users typically, and I know even with us we have this. You have influencers and you have resistors. I know who the influencers are in your organization. I know who they are in my organization. I might meet them in the hall, and I'm like, hey, what's a problem you're trying to solve right now? Conversation gets started. I can wow them with a data viz. They will draft your resistors, and you know who your resistors are. Every organization has them. We have them. They're fearful, territorial, old dogs, new tricks, stubborn, differing agenda. But just know who they are and know that you can have different levels of resistors. I can have somebody that's just a little bit resistant. I'll spend some energy with them. If I have those that are super resistant, I'm not going to try to solve that problem. I'm going to move on because the influencers will actually draft them. So there's a gap that exists between you and the user, and the longer that you're in the evangelist role, the bigger that gap is going to grow, because I'm going to become even more and more familiar with my tool or the tool and what we're doing, and it's going to be more foreign to them. Acknowledge that there's a gap there and be aware of the gap and realize that it's your responsibility as a data evangelist to close that gap. It's not the user, because it's not about you. So as a data evangelist, am I being successful? I have to be looking at how our users are doing, and if I need to look up attendance data, I can't take a shortcut and go look in the database. I need to actually use the dashboard that I created for them to look at attendance. And when I do that, typically, sometimes you'll go, that is a terrible user experience. Always eat your own dog food. Be using what you create for others, and don't take the shortcut and just go to the database and find the data. So what are some of our next steps? Currently, like I said, with a lot of the work dashboards that we have out there, information overload, so we're at risk of totally giving them too many choices, which means they're going to be less likely to choose anything. So that's our next steps. We need to refine and bring that down. These are actual pictures of me as a kid, because we're all really just little kids inside. And that's me crying, and I really probably still look like that when I have bad days now. But you will invest days in projects that will get killed in minutes. And man, those are tough, but you have to be resilient. And you're also going to create things that took you 15 minutes and you think, I don't know if anybody will really look at it. And you'll throw it up and it'll be this big win and it'll spread like wildfire. So be resilient. Good days, bad days. It's hard, it's challenging, but it's worth it. And with that, we are finished and we're ready for any Q&A that you guys might have. Any questions? Yes.
Hi. Do you ever get resistance from people around the church that run a cost software to say, if I have 25 interactors, that's $25,000, let's say, that's directly not in the direct line ministry, and people sort of say, I'm sure you're funded based upon donations and offerings. Do you ever get that kind of resistance to a relationship like this?
Yeah, so the question basically was, do you get resistance from what it's going to cost? Yeah. And the answer to that is yes. But as Dan Murray says, you'll be amazed at what budget makes itself available when leadership has aha moments with Tableau. And that's really been for us. So in that case, be strategic about which projects you're working on, because you can start with just a desktop, right? And then share that via PDF. Like he said, find out what leadership values, give them an aha moment, and you'll be amazed at what budget will typically make itself available.
Yeah, and churches specifically have got to be introduced to a broader ROI equation. In other words, it's you really got to get that ROI equation down. The one dashboard that she produced, we had $80,000 in background reporting, hard costs, right? That were laying out there unused. The return on that one day offset the majority of our expense that we had invested in the direction, and that's repeated over and over and over. So you've got to get the culture to broaden their sense of ROI.
I'm reminded of an Edward Deming quote: "In God we trust; all others bring data." I'm curious if you've had discussions in your leadership team how to reconcile going on faith versus going on data.
Sure.
It's kind of unique to your business model, but not completely.
Not completely, yeah. Yeah.
So
Here's what we say is
repeat the question.
Okay. The question is, how do we reconcile the difference between going on faith versus going on data in a church environment? And the way we deal with it very forthrightly and very, very open. I'm the most data-driven of our leadership team. And my expression to Craig and the rest of the leadership team is this: I understand if we ever want to go against what the numbers say, and I'll understand why. My commitment to them is for the numbers to have a seat at the table. And we never think that the numbers should dictate the outcome. There may be times that we look at the numbers and we say, you know what, in spite of that, I feel like we need to do this, or we feel like the church is being led to do this, and it's great. But there's too many conversations that if the numbers aren't at the table, it can have disastrous results. And so our commitment is just for the numbers to be a part of the conversation, not to override what may be bigger. Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about data collection, right? So being able to kind of do visualization and analyze data, it's important to have data collected, and within the church environment, sometimes you might not have the right tools or processes to actually do that, and you don't want to be too kind of labor intensive in terms of volunteer staff. Can you talk about how you reconcile making sure you get enough good data in?
Sure. So the question was, how do you get the data in, and how do you make sure you get quality data to analyze it? And one of the challenges in our organization is we're super agile, we're super fast, and we're not bureaucratic. So it's like if the Life Missions and Life Groups team wants to use SurveyMonkey to collect their data, they can. If this other team wants to dump it into SQL Server, they can. So we have data all over the place. And it took probably the first 6 months of my role was just to identify where is all the data living. And I would find, okay, there's pockets of data that actually could probably come together. So we did that, but we leave it very free. I mean, we still have a lot of stuff that's Excel spreadsheets. We do have SQL Server, Postgres database that we pull data in, but it's very free and people can do. But we're trying to bring and rein that in, but we also want people to have that flexibility and collect the data they want. And then we use Fellowship One as our CRM tool. That we hook up to as well.
What I'll say, our real-time weekend data rolls in via an app called Church Metrics. That's a free app in the App Store. and church metrics via smartphone, all of our attendance numbers, and as many fields as you wish to define can be defined and then rolled in to one location. And
we have an API for that as well, so you can hook Tableau up to that. We created that tool. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, what dashboard does Pastor Craig consume on a regular basis? What do you serve up to him?
What dashboards does Pastor Craig look at on a regular basis?
Craig's while he has a great deal of appreciation for the depth of the data that we dig deeper, Craig is probably going to operate more around attendance than any other thing, and it's what's in him from the very beginning, and will continue to be with him. And
On that point, what's interesting is what the evangelical Christian church and the membership and partnership. How do you track that? People having correspondence and such in there. How's that work?
well, we pretty open-handedly. You go ahead.
Yeah, his question was, how do you, being an evangelical, how do we track membership? Because we don't do membership or, yeah. Well, we realize there's going to be a level of ambiguity, and we're okay with that. And so we'll never know the unique numbers, and we're okay with that. I mean, it's one of those things I wrestle with as a data analyst. I want to know. That's why I would love if we scanned everyone's retina when they walked in. But obviously that's not an option. But we just realized that we will never know the unique number.
Yeah, our primary source of coming to know people who are attending are going to be when they begin to serve, whenever they enroll their children. They could be going through any number of things that would be known, but we leave it up to them as to when they make themselves known. Other questions? I really appreciate you guys coming.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks a lot.
much.
Thank you.